Welcome back to Balance Boldly Podcast for ambitious women in business and a few brave men. I'm your host, Naketa Ren Thigpen, always excited to be in the place with you. And today, Auntie, I'm so excited. My friend, this expert, this mogul in the making, this incredible magician, Akinyi Ochieng. She is phenomenal, and if you don't know her, you need to. I literally am tempted to tell you, pause what you're listening to, pull up LinkedIn and make sure you follow her because she is a master at everything social entrepreneurship and impact. Akinyi is a co-founder of ORISUN, a soon-to-be launched clean organic beauty line infused with African botanicals that enrich skin and partner communities. Oh, just makes you want to rub it all over. And sidebar, I love this oil. I'm completely waiting for her to make it retail, but sell it wholesale to me because I need it all over my body, like all over. It is amazing, every last version of it. And I've tried at least 3 of them. They are phenomenal. And they really do give your skin life, just saying. You'll see when you see Akinyi. She also serves on the board chair of the USA board of SOS Sahel, addressing food security and climate challenges in the Sahel region. She and her insights have been across the globe from Forbes, CNBC, BBC, African Business Magazine, and the World Economic Forum. In addition to having an illustrious background educationally from Yale to all kinds of prestigious business schools, programs, and philanthropic endeavors, Akinyi has exceeded over 25 million in partnerships. Akinyi, welcome to the BBP. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm just like lighting up in your golden glow. That's what's happening with me.
Everyone gave me an intro like that. I'm like, wow.
Take me on the road with you. Take me on the road with you. I failed to mention that she's literally like, I travel a good bit. I'll just say a good bit. I can't find Akinyi most days. I'm like, where in the world is Akinyi Ochieng? Like, where is she? Like, where's Waldo? It's like, where's Akinyi? If she is not somewhere in South America, somewhere in Africa, across the continent, not just in one particular country. For those of you who are thinking Africa is a country, it's not. It's a continent with many countries on it. She's usually trotting across there or somewhere in North America. I can't keep up, but I know your husband does, and that's all that matters. So I'm glad you're here with us today, and I would love for you to share just a little bit about what's pulling you forth in this part of your world today.
Oh, that is an interesting and powerful question. What's pulling me forward? I think I've actually been in a space recently where I felt overwhelmed by the just breadth and size and immensity of the problems in front of us globally. Yeah. And I had this moment the other day where I realized if I just help one person, and if one person's life is transformed by the impact that I have had on them, whether it's, helping them see something in themselves that they haven't seen, get that opportunity that they've always wanted, meet the person of their dreams. Like, it doesn't even have to all be professional. Like, I will feel that I have done well. And so the other day I was meeting with a young person who told me that she saw her potential because of how encouraged and excited I was about her life and what she was doing. Yeah. And that was enough for me. So that is what is propelling me forward right now. Just thinking about like, who's the one person I can touch today that, I can make a little bit of impact.
I have to say, this is just a highlight reason of why we're friends. Because it's the imprint for me, like all day long. And you're rippling your healed parts of you, the parts of you that are raw and unfiltered, that are loving, that are in this space of growth. And you're not afraid to like show the evolution of these layers of you and in parentheses, still do the work and still ripple the impact. And to your point, which I think is such a beautiful kind of bracket around the essence of you, is only for one. You're here only for one. And whoever else is impacted by that is all overflow. That humility in and of itself, Akinyi, is something that helps you stand apart from people who are overrun with this need for many to
Yeah.
validate, many to appreciate,
But it's
many to
hard,
like. Yeah.
I feel like I have to check myself because I
Yeah.
think when you go to these big schools with these fancy names and
Hmm.
people expect certain things of you,
Yeah.
so you're going to be this or do that. And that isn't to say that I'm not ambitious, that I
Yeah.
want good things, but I think that you can, ambitious, that to me doesn't only have to be the big moments, it can be the small day-to-day things. And so that's why it's the just one person mentality. It
Yeah.
doesn't always have to be the big award, the big publication, the big contract.
Yeah. And all of those things, hashtag, have already come and will continue to come your
Yes.
way because of your focus. But I think one of the things that you're, for lack of a better framing, differentiating is that you're not codependent on your ambition,
Yeah.
which is unfortunately the other side of ambition that a lot of people
Mhm.
don't want to give name to. Your ambitiousness is not your driver. It's just a beautiful part of your power. It's something that you can adjust the flame up on, or say, you know what, I need to kick back and be a little bit of a lazy overachiever today and snuggle up with my man, or do whatever I want to do after I just taught Bible study, or whatever it is that I've been doing across the world of my gifts, and know that you have control over and it doesn't have control over you. That's a huge
Exactly.
differentiator. So thank you.
Yeah. It's I think it's important to like have that sense of like what is important, and also not to let the accolades define you.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I spent a lot of my 20s in this rat race of like the next thing, the next achievement. And those are important and I'm proud of them. But I think that I have been really reframing, how I think about the what's next and what's the big thing and what I'm prioritizing. And that's the journey that I'm now on.
Yeah, I love that so much. So in the green room, we were having a little bit of that. We had no idea that we were going to go down this rabbit hole, but we were like just sharing a little bit of that in the green room when I was definitely in my late 20s, because I'm a woman of a certain age right now. I'm very proud of my wisdom / old age. But when I was in my late 20s, I was definitely uh, a perfectionist. I was
Hmm.
definitely connected to the validation that those accolades afforded me, and not necessarily from a cheering from the audience or the crowd around you that know it, because I was also very private. I still am
Hmm.
very private around what I do and the things that I achieve. But there was this part of me that had almost like a shadow version of myself that was like, yeah, girl, you got to check this box. You got to check this box. You got to check this box. Even though, again, it wasn't the validation of other people, it was in my head something that I needed to do to feel validated. And with growth and maturity, therapy, coaching, mentoring, spiritual counseling, the whole shebang, because your girl needed it all. With all of those things, I was able to do some deeper reflecting and seeing exactly where you are right now, with the reminder of what really matters and what should be pulling you forth versus what you feel you need to continue to push out of you. And that question around what it looks like for this chapter of yourself in your 30s and 40s and 50s and beyond versus in your teens and tweens and 20s is always expanding. And when you give yourself that permission to know that what was amazing and dope and beautiful and incredibly important yesterday is not necessarily the same today. And I think the wisdom is in being in a really uncomfortable place to recognize that that is your truth and being okay with that.
I mean, I think of it as I'm not afraid to change. And I feel like that's the one thing that has been constant throughout my life, that
Yeah.
I think that whether it's having to move a lot or
Mhm.
career pivots, that I don't think I'm afraid of change. I
Yeah.
think of it as something that's very natural.
Yeah.
And, any moment that we're living it's the first, it is a first. And so, we can't go off of the playbook of how things have been done before. It's an informative piece of information,
Yeah.
but I don't think it has to be, the be all end all. And so I try and keep that in perspective of, just because it's been done this way before doesn't mean it has to be done this way going forward. And I can change. I don't have to be wedded to the way I've been thinking, the way that I have been doing, the way that others have been thinking and others have been doing.
It's so true. And that's a powerful reminder for the work that you do too, because you're
Mm-hmm.
working inside for the various layers of your work. Some of them is working inside very old thinking. right?
Yes.
Right. Right.
Like you try turning around
Stagnates.
150-year-old bank institution, you're like, okay.
I'm gonna just do that with my eyes
Yes.
closed. No problem.
Yeah. But I think
Yeah.
if we are open to changing that script,
Mhm.
it at least allows us to have the imagination
Yeah.
about what it could be like.
Going forward, what does that look like? Because I'm thinking about you as a magician behind the curtain. And for those of you who are new to this podcast or new to this particular series that we're doing, it's just a special short-term spotlight on some of my amazing, amazing people in my ecosystem. When you have a magician behind the curtain, they're often projecting other people forward. Other people, like your part of your role is to make sure that there's excellence for where the spotlight is supposed to shine. But a lot of the magic is behind that curtain. You are creating a lot of that magic. There's a lot of puppeteering. I hate to
Oh,
call
yes.
it what it is, right? It just is what it is. There's a lot of tool belt wearing, problem solving, putting out fires so no one sees the smoke on the other side, watching the performance that you are the magician kind of, either co-creating or creating, quite frankly. And in that, many times the magician doesn't get recognized for all of the work. And I know that that's not your driver to be recognized for that work because you're about the impact. You want to make sure that your work speaks for itself. And in parentheses, making sure that you don't get kind of consumed by the smoke from all the fires that you're putting out at the same time is really, really important. And in your work, you're often dealing with people, just using like the banking example that you brought up, with people who are very resistant to change
Yeah.
and accepting the beautiful, brilliant strategy that they hired you for, like and
Yes.
all of it. How do you navigate that without being super frustrated when you're like, you hired me to do the thing, I'm trying to do the thing, but you're really not being truly open to doing the thing that you hired me to do. And at the end of the day, you're about the outcome. I'm about the outcome. I'm here for the excellence. How do you navigate that as the magician when you're dealing with, for lack of a better, an audience that isn't receptive?
That's an interesting question. And I feel like every day in my work, I end up encountering it in some way, shape, or form. I think that one of my, if I'm going to toot my own horn per se, one of my best qualities is that I'm very curious.
Yes.
And so even in spite of frustration, I will always ask why.
Yeah.
And want to dig deeper. Is it a systems process? Is there something with the system that you're operating in that makes it difficult to move forward? Okay, so what can we change about the system? Is it possible? What's the time frame of that change? What's the feasibility? Is it something cultural, like whether it's like in the broader cultural space of like how we operate and interact as human beings, or in the context of an organization?
Yeah.
So I also ask that question, or is it something process related? Like, is there just something I can do to make it easier for us to move from point A to point B?
Yeah.
And so I try and kind of diagnose what that roadblock is and see how we can work around it. And that takes time, and it takes a lot of conversation. It takes a lot of observation.
Yeah.
So sometimes I like to, especially if I'm working in a team context, I might be the person leading the team, but I actually like to play the role of like reading the room as one of my colleagues is talking, to understand like who's responding to what, and thinking through like, why are they responding that way?
Yeah. You're really good at reading the room. Yeah, you are. I've seen you work, and you're very good at reading the room. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's how I generally think it would go about it.
It's challenging, and I relate to it because many of your processes are very therapeutic, right? Like they have a kind of clinical systemicness to it with, I'm actively listening, I'm assessing before I even get to a diagnosis process. So then I can create the treatment plan of where it is that we're supposed to do and how to implement it. And then also, I've also seen you very agile and being able to say, okay, well, I thought we were going to go this way. It looks like we got to create a different version of this. And I've seen you adjust to it in real time, which is also a skill that I don't think a lot of people even recognize as a skill, because depending on your culture, your community, your background, your rearing, you might say, oh, well, you just got to adapt and keep it moving. Yeah. But a lot of us take it for granted. There's a huge population of people who cannot adapt and keep it moving on the spot without time to process. And for the work that you do, as a strategist, as someone who's created many social entrepreneurial layers to yourself, from the I can't say the word philanthropy because I was thinking philanthropic philanthropy, all the way through those things that are more tangible in a sense where you can put your hands on it, where you're dealing with like people in a room, all the way through the navigating people who are literally flying on trains and subways and wherever else, and they need to land knowing that something is taken care of already because Akinyi put her hand on it and took care of it. You know, all those things offer opportunity for excellence, but also opportunity for so many fires. Many fires. And many times you're dealing with multiple at the same time, and you still have to be intentionally selfish and preserving yourself so that you can show up fully for the next client, for the next part, for the next layer, for your man when you get home, because you are a married woman, right? Like all of the layers to that. And I just want to give you your flowers around that. Like, you are very good at what you do.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That means a lot coming from you because I admire you so deeply.
Stop it. Say it again. I didn't hear you in the back. No. No, Akinyi used a word that I was blushing so hard. I think I almost spit out my vanilla black tea with oat milk in it when you were like, your voice is delicious. And I was like, oh, what?
It's true. Everyone listening to this knows. They're like, ooh, Naketa is on the line.
Oh, thank you. You know, from one magician to another, I receive. Thank you. In all seriousness, I really appreciate the work that you're doing. And I'm excited for ORISUN and so many other things that you are conceiving in this moment. Because I know I'm looking at your eyes and I'm like, you're like, I am 5 chapters beyond anything that's written in any bio. Like, you have no idea the things that are like glowing behind your head, even though you're like playing with which one you want to immerse yourself in deepest.
You know, it's interesting. I was thinking about this. And on one hand, I was joking in that. So for the listeners, I'm half Kenyan, half Gambian. My heritage is a really big part of who I am. And sometimes when people are like, oh, you do a lot of things, I'm like, it's the West African in me. I'm just, we hustle, we do a lot of things. But I think if I actually be serious for a second, I think it's, I'm trying to design a portfolio of things that I do. And that portfolio is complementary. Social entrepreneurship is a part of that. The philanthropy work that I do is a part of that. The work that I do, even volunteering in my community, is a part of that. And like everything makes sense together because everything complements another thing. Yeah. And so when people say that I do too much, I'm like, one, are you doing enough? But also
that part.
They don't understand the puzzle pieces and that I've thought through how these puzzle pieces come together.
Yeah. It's also the reality that everyone has a different capacity. And so your capacity is deep and wide. So the breadth of you can have variation and some novelty. So you don't get monotonous, right? In whatever it is that you're working on. But then the depth of you also has a large responsibility in this world. So and this isn't a judgment of anyone who doesn't have the same kind of capacity. That's not what your responsibility, RITE, is supposed to be. That's not what you're supposed to be focused on. You do you. Akinyi does her. Naketa does her. And that's, and I say that with so much love because I hear that all the time too. Like, oh, you're a balancing relationship advisor. I don't get it because you feel like a therapist. You feel like that. I'm like, all the pieces work together. What's most important is, what are you getting out of the moment with me? Mm-hmm. Are you getting what you need? Then it doesn't matter what the title is. It doesn't matter whether it's the social entrepreneur hat, the philanthropy hat, the strategy hat, the mogul hat, e-commerce hat, the fact that you know how to do purchasing partnerships and product development hat. Like, these are real things, by the way. But it doesn't matter when you are with whoever you're righteously connected to in that moment. Are they getting what they're supposed to get from you, and vice versa, so that you're not being drained?
To your point about being drained, I try to put myself, it's not always possible. Life is not always in our control, but to put myself in situations where I feel that my cup is being filled, either intellectually, spiritually. So even if I seem to be doing many things, I'm very, I have the capacity because I'm always being poured into and pouring out. And I'm energized. I'm excited about my life.
Yeah. Yeah, you should be. You have a very beautiful, soft life. Coming from a different conversation. She really is about that soft life. I'm just saying. Like, she works incredibly well. I won't use
But
the
I
word
also play
hard,
hard. I
but
do.
yes, she does play. She plays well just as much as she works well. And her husband is amazing. So let me just say that. Shout out.
Yeah, well
You
deserved.
yeah, he does deserve it. He's
Yeah.
incredible, and he deals with all of your specialness. So
Yes.
there's that.
And encourages it. It's like, oh, you should think about this. You should do this.
I love it. You right. I think you do it annually. I
Yeah.
was privy to receive one of them last year, so I'm waiting for 2024. This beautiful, almost like highlight reel
Mm-hmm.
of not just what happened in your world for the full year, but the way you saw the world in that year. And it's almost like a family newsletter that
Yeah.
you write and that you send. And I received one last year and I was like, oh my God, one, you're a phenomenal writer.
Oh, thank you.
You paint the picture so beautifully. And I will say this, which is the only other place that I've given this compliment. I've never seen someone's writing as beautiful as yours besides my own husband. And I
Oh
mean
my
that.
gosh. To be on even Dean's level, that is
Yes. And that is hard because I'm not even on Dean's level. Okay. I'm a good writer, but he is on a whole nother level. And when I read your family, like love letter, like your newsletter of all the things that you've experienced, you and your husband and the world and the art that you were collecting and just the beauty of it, you not only wrote it well, I could physically see myself embodied in the experience that you were painting, which is exactly what happens when I read his writing. And that's a whole nother skill. Like that's not anywhere on your bio. It's like a whole nother place. And that made me see you deep, like in a very deep way.
that.
Yeah.
I love
No, I loved it. I was like, yes, keep going. I hope I stay on the list. I hope I get one next year and the year
you. Are
after.
definitely on the list for 2024.
Like I want to stay on the list. That's all I'm saying. I just want to be on the list. I just want to be on the list. So when you're not doing all the layers of you that is filling your capacity beautifully so you can make room to be poured in and continue to pour from your overflow, how are you giving yourself permission to pause?
So I'm going to bastardize this quote. Or actually, I should say, I'm using language of violence, which I don't like. I was going to say, I don't want to use the word bastardize. I want to use butcher. And then I was like, that's not. But I'm not going to get this quote right, which is what I mean to say. But there's a quote that goes along the lines of, you have to put yourself in the way of beauty. And so I put myself in the way of beauty every day. I feed that part of myself, which I think is an essential part of human life. Don't get me on a tangent about like public spaces and parks and things. I think that's something everyone has a human right to, but that's a whole other story. But I'm lucky enough to live near the park every morning. And that's how I start my day, to just put myself in the way of beauty. But even, art and collecting Black art is a big part of my life. And even waking up in my house and seeing the sun and seeing these beautiful paintings, putting myself in the way of beauty. And that's how I pause. Because I think about myself, like, as I'm walking in nature, I feel small. Mm-hmm. And that gives me permission to pause, because I think when you feel the pressure to be a giant, you're running around trying to find the next thing to conquer, et cetera. But
so true.
Feeling small in that way in nature, but just being surrounded by things that inspire me and help my mind wander and spark new ideas in the form of art. That's how I give myself permission to pause.
Girl, aesthetic intimacy. I love it. I love all the parts of everything that you said, because a lot of people don't understand that intimacy is so much more layered than the physical that we think of, or even the emotional. But you can experience such a deep, fulfilling connection from aesthetic intimacy, which is the beauty that you're putting yourself in the midst of. That is a whole body orgasm, which is a whole different type of episode. So I won't go there so that you can so that you can use this episode for work purposes. But
I think it's so important. Yes.
Yeah.
It's so important, because it's like, I mean, when I don't know if you've ever had this moment where you see something so beautiful, you have to gasp. It's just like, oh my gosh.
Yes. Like I
you stop in your tracks, so you pause because you quite literally stop in your tracks.
Yeah. There's so much to that. You also sound like a bit of a biophil, where like nature really does something for you, to you, with you, through you. And it makes, everything. It's just another reason why we're friends. I just want to just put that out there. It's like
But I have to
reason.
make the distinction because a friend is going to call me out if they hear this episode. I love nature, but I am like an outside person. I'm not an outdoors person. Like you will not catch me hiking. You will not catch me suffering in the wilderness. But a nice little, day by the lake where we're looking at the lake.
Yes. I'm that person.
That's where I am.
Yeah. I love the distinction because as much as I just had this conversation with my god sister who is like a Yosemite Park hiker. Like we'll do all the things.
Like Yosemite, but me hike it, that's a different story.
And I'm with you. I'm like, drive me up to the top. Let me ingest the majesty. We don't even need to take a picture. Just let me ingest it. But I'm not dealing with these bugs and these snakes and all the things. And I'm not jumping in anybody's lake that I can't see the bottom of my feet.
Exactly.
Just saying. I love you said I am. What did you say? I'm not an outside person. I'm an outdoors person. Outdoor person. Yes, I love that. You like me be outside, not outdoors. I hear that. We might have to plug that into the description somewhere. Thank you, Akinyi. You've been amazing. How can people connect with you and learn more about the great work that you're doing, or even follow some of your aesthetic intimacy that you're sharing?
Yeah. So find me on my website, akinyiochieng.com. You'll see some writing. You'll see some recipes. You'll see all the fun things I'm up to, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn.
I love it so much. You are incredible. A breath of fresh air. And I'm honored by your presence, your energy, and the small window of access that we have with you today.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Balance Boldly listeners, I told you, I know, I keep doing it. My husband is so over it when I'm like patting my back, like, oh yes, another potent human, but she is. I hope you felt it because she was given what needed to be given. Seriously, thank you so much for all of you who stayed through the whole time, who listened, who loved on, and who really immersed yourself in this experience with Akinyi Ochieng and all of her brilliance and her beauty, because she is exactly what you want to be when you're looking at the reality of what does balance look like, where you get to create your joy. Doesn't mean it's perfect. It doesn't mean you're not going to have rough or rocky starts or moments to it, but it does mean that it's yours and it's your version of living fully. So I hope that you really pulled in everything that needed to be pulled in for yourself. And I have 2 asks. So if you are new to the BBP, you are not used to my boldness, but get used to it. And for all of those who have been listening since 2016, when we started this particular show, you already know, I need you to think of one person, just one, in your ecosystem who can truly be inspired, motivated, or filled up by listening to Akinyi's story. Just share this with one person, no context, heard this amazing thing, thought of you. That's it. Send it in some version. Don't give a lot of script to it. The second is I want you to enjoy the balance of your day. But remember, do it boldly.